Hail and wet. Wow, I can't even do an intro anymore. It has really been a long time. I was going to say hail and well met, everybody. This is Darrell Davey with Oaken Hollow Games down in the game room. And tonight I am doing a weekly check-in, which hasn't been weekly lately because of various reasons. It's just been super busy. I've been doing some other... I have been doing a little bit of work on stuff, but life and end the school year and stuff are coming up, so it's busy in that regard, so I haven't been on as much, so I apologize. But I had promised a few weeks ago that we were going to be looking at some of the games that we have done in the past. Now, I wouldn't mind going over these in more detail, but I figured since I have a little bit of time this evening, I wanted to come out and do a quick overview of some of the stuff that led to All Hallows Eve and Skirmish and kind of the history of what I used to do before taking this more seriously than I have. Although, truth be told, I've always, middle school was probably the first time I designed a game. Then went on to adding mods to things like Zombies by Twilight Creations, which I have a little bit here, and I'll try to make this look cohesive as like a step in to follow along in the journey. There's a few things here that I honestly don't even remember the function or what they were, and this isn't all of them. It's just what I had, and I have like a bag that I've carried around for a couple of things. So without further ado, I'm going to flip the camera around here, and you get to see kind of my messy workstation. But I'm going to go over quick some of the stuff that, like I said, I had designed, now, many years ago, what has led into some of other things and where some of this may go in the future for Oaken Hollow Games. So, just to get a few things out of the way, I have no memory of what the intent of this game was. I have a sword, a shield, a spear, and a bow. My assumption was I was trying to work on some sort of fighting game where these had different ranges. A bow could shoot all the way over, a spear could shoot 2 forward, the sword had to be 1 away, and the shield could block something. Kind of like a rock, paper, scissors, but you'd set your, these down in certain orders, is, I guess, kind of the thought behind there. I briefly have some memories of making these, and I recognize them, but I have, frankly, zero idea what the intent, besides kind of what I just mentioned, for those ones were. Going on to something similar would be this. I remember it being something where you'd roll dice, and then you could associate them to these different different aspects. You'd have a pack zone that would let your character do certain things. So every time it'd be a little bit different, and you'd track your health down here, and everything would be used with D6, and then you'd have a deck that you draw from to use. It may have been in some conjunction with that. It might have been with this adventure one, which I'll get to in a minute. I'm not truthfully entirely sure. It could even have gone with some of this over here. We'll get to in a minute as well. But so I wanted to get the ones I have limited memory on. I'm going to work a little bit backwards between these two because I want to save that one for last. But I'll start way back. I have mentioned more times, and even in this stream than I can remember, that I would mod. What started me getting into games more proper and serious and going like, oh, this is more fun, is the Zombies game and the mods that I used to do for me and my friends as we'd play. And so in the game, there was one you could get, I think it was like 6.66 that allowed you to make your own cards. But before that had came out, I had made my own cards already out of just, old card stock. And we'd either use this deck or we'd slot them in and just pretend we didn't notice they were nothing like the regular looking cards. And they would add on to your combat ability. And you can see there's duplicates, so having to rewrite everything. My handwriting has not gotten better over the years. And it also was modded in a way that we would do our We had like a map that we made where zombies would come from the outside and slowly work their way in, and it was more of a survival, like almost a tower defense in a way, opposed to what the original zombie game was. But that was like my most heavily modded version of the zombies game, and these were, I believe, part of that as well once it came there. Same for these, kind of me and my friends. I had one that was Rafael for a while because my spelling's also atrocious. But you could find weapons, and instead of just doing something by you, I gave them range. This one just added a pip to your dice. This one shot in a spread. This one had a longer range, +1 to attack for melee, and then a sword could like swoop through and attack something in that area. So that's where a lot of my stuff started, was modding pre-existing games. And then the joy of that came from just seeing people like getting into it more or making the game more fun for us or customizable. So I had a ton of fun with that. The next one that I did was this dice monster, which I'm going to save for the end. But truly, I look back with this with so much nostalgia. I'll get into it. But this one led into, this was like out of boredom and out of a couple different things, and it led into, okay, if this isn't going to work, let's see how like an adventuring game works. I was trying to take some of the aspects of that game and transform it into this, and you would have a character of some sort, a knight, a wizard, a bard, an adventurer, apparently I didn't want a swordsman, a thief, and a healer, and you would roll the dice, and that's what they could do depending on what you rolled. So you defend for 10, you defend, attack for 5, so on and so forth. And you would go through, kind of like zombies, you'd have these face down, and then the dungeon would grow. And the white areas where you'd walk with your piece. And if you came across a monster that was on it, you would flip one of these monster cards over, and they would attack you for, D6. So this would do a D6 at you. Where's the other 6? Figure -1 to rolls for the scarecrow. I'd bash your brains in if you had any. Another D6. You can see these are pretty old. They're coffee stained and whatever. Minotaur. No dungeon would be complete without one. D10, and then they would attack your intrepid hero, and they each had different abilities as you'd go through. And that was probably my first whack at trying something more substantial. And it just really didn't have any legs to it at the time. I can see where I would change some stuff up and how it could potentially work for things. I think there's enough of very similar stuff out there that it's not something that's necessary by any scope of the imagination. But this harkens back to taking something I really enjoyed and not with the right intent, trying to bring it up to the next level. I thought this game would be fun. I was fusing the Dice Monsters and the zombies, and Dice Monsters was fun, but trying to make it something that worked, trying to be something, it stopped some of that creative flow for me. And though I like it, and yeah, there's maybe some more to it, it wasn't quite exactly what I had wanted, and there would be issues that would come up with it. I had mentioned before that my friend Cameron, who's featured one of the cards over here, was one of my best friends, and very, very good at breaking my games. And I think he had just found one too many flaws with it, to the point where I was like, yeah, this just isn't working. So it got set aside. Speaking of, I had another one which was based off of a book me and my friend Justy were kind of working on, where we were heroes transported to a different world. They're typical self-insertion characters, where everybody was good at fighting different types of monsters. So in this, you would have a leader type or an admin of a group. There would be leaders and members, and you'd recruit a team of like monster hunters. And each one would be better at one of 3 aspects, whether it was physical, spiritual, or it wasn't technological. physical, spiritual, and there was one other one I can't remember off the top of my head. But each person would be a little bit better at something. And they would go in and they would fight monsters. And I think I don't have monster cards. And these are all member cards. Other creature cards that has been set can choose to send a member to Guildhall, shuffle one current creature back into the deck, and add a new one. So you could, like, depending on what your team looked like and who you recruited, you would get a mission. It would come up and you'd say, okay, I know bare minimum it's a spiritual one. So let's make a team of spiritual fighters and out of what we have in our reserve. And you would slowly recruit more members and then be able to use them in subsequent combats as long as they survived. And then other cards would allow you to, like, get more information, like, oh, it's spiritual and physical, so you're gonna need to bring, man, I really wish I knew what that third one was. Spiritual and physical one. My girls are taking a bath, so if you're screaming, that's what they're doing. Other ones will let you get more information on the monsters. Maybe you can switch up, like, oh, this isn't good enough for us, we're going to move this along. A little bit of agency in what you fought. And then I had my friends at the time, so myself, my buddy Andrew, Cameron, and Justy, who for some reason, I don't know, maybe I just didn't have a picture of him, he might not have a Facebook, is the admins, and then the leaders would be stronger in specific types. And let's see, because this was like melee... Maybe one was intellect or sci-fi. I'm not... that's going to really bother me. Creatures... I'm looking at the cards now, because... Banish... Attack when facing multicolor card, roll a result. So, yeah, I'm not sure. But each one was a little bit better at something else, and you'd make a team and you'd go and fight the monsters. So, that kind of worked. This game ended up kind of between the two, started going towards skirmish. This was too much. It was too many moving parts, especially at the time. Young game developer, doesn't really understand a lot of the rules, just making stuff that I thought would work by smashing some components together, and it was fine. It was okay. But it was these that led to this that then led to skirmish. And the leap was, let's take some of the extra stuff away and just make a team of 3 guys who have a very specific thing and try and knock somebody out. I just stripped all the fat off of it and went for the bare bones, and that turned into skirmish, which, for those of you who know, was my first game I started designing until I got swept away by All Hallows Eve, and that is that. Now, this is, again, pure nostalgia for me. Dice Monsters, probably already an existing name, was one of my earlier attempts. I had worked at a undisclosed mill in town here, and I would get so bored, and all I had on my phone was an app that would let me roll 2d6, and it would roll, and they were 2 different colors. So I was trying to make in my mind a way that one dice was the enemy, one dice was mine, and I would just roll, and the green one got higher than the orange one, so the green one wins, I win. The orange got higher than the green one, I lose a point, and I'd go for 5 points or whatever. But really, it was just me. There was no agency, there was nothing. But I got in my head, what if there was something to what the roll did? So, and I mean, I know these are now a little bit, they're hastily done, but I just love these little guys. This one in particular, this guy, some of the designs on these, they just bring back so many memories, and I absolutely love them. So you'd roll a dice, and depending on what you would roll, that's how much you would hit for. You'd have health up here. There was a chance to miss on any of them. Block 5, so some of them could block some damage that was coming in. And then each different number would have kind of a different feel to it. Like 1s, I believe, were your attackers, and 6s were your defense. So if you look at like this big turtle and this big rhino guy, get out of here, would have higher health, maybe? No, it doesn't seem like higher health. Where are they? They'd have a higher chance of blocking. You could heal 5 on this guy. This guy would just block any damage coming in, and he'd do little attacks. So then on the other end of the spectrum would be your 1s, and they each have their little pip number hidden on their person somewhere. They would be more attack. There would be barely any blocking, but you would get the most damage out. And then it would be kind of a step in each direction. So 5s are still fairly defensive, but not quite as much. This like metal floating eyeball, maybe a little more healing, a little more damage. Same with this like crab robot. 4s, I think, were like tricksters. So they were the ones that would mess with other people. Let's see, an opponent attack, or block an opponent's attack, then attack with opponent's attack. So you would block any damage coming to you, and you'd shoot it back, because he has a mirror, so he's kind of hard to get. And this ghost guy, miss, heal, he was just straight down the middle. He was hard to take out because he could do kind of a little bit of everything. These guys were a little bit more attacker types, and then even then, like, 2s were dinosaurs, 6s were like living ones, 5s were robots, these were like animalistic, or ancient, and then the 3s were like people, and like a knight and another knight, I suppose. But so you and your opponent would you would roll, and you'd be like, oh, I rolled a 1, so I get to pick one of the 1s. I pick this one. I rolled a 3. I get to pick one of the 3s. And I picked a 2, and I get one of the 2s. So this would be your team. Your opponent would then get 3, and you'd have 1 that was in your active spot and 2 that were back. And on a miss, you could, I think it was something, some of them you could switch out. I added on. So at base value, it was you'd put 1 out, they'd put 1 out. You'd fight till 1 was knocked out. That person would be the winner. And then later on, it's like, well, let's have a team of them. So you'd randomly roll. You get a random team. And it would be a slugfest. And on a miss, you could switch out your guys. So kind of Pokemon-esque. Kind of Digimon-esque, I guess. But and then I had bosses that you could fight as well. So they would hit for higher damage and be able to attack 2 different monsters for 10. So you'd be able to team up with your friends, with your monsters, and fight bosses. And then so that boss mechanic and this like roll for what you get evolved into this. You pick your hero type, you get to roll, and that's what they do, and you fight monsters. And then that became too complicated, it evolved into skirmish. Now, this game keeps coming back to me. I feel instinctually there is something more here. I think it needs, obviously, some touching up, some TLC. There would have to be something where I'd be able to mitigate your chances a little bit more. But Dice Monsters is absolutely something I want to bring to Oaken Hollow Games at some point. And it might not be called Dice Monsters. It might not be quite as simplistic as this. But I wouldn't quite want to stray into the like trading card value, but like getting 3 or 4 of each number would be cool for some variety and stuff. I don't know. I really truly think there's something there. And maybe that's just my nostalgia talking. And then let's see. I think this is just notes. So you can just see, yeah, like all the notes I would take and try and figure stuff out. And yeah, there's a lot. Combos and build up attacks. I'm not even sure which game this is for. If it's for the monster one, red damage, blue damage, yellow damage. So this is the start of maybe skirmish. No, this is the start of this one, I believe. When you beat this creature, you get to fight again, up to 2 up the pass, fight opposing team. This creature gains +2 per member on your team. Okay, so yeah, I could maybe look through this and see a little bit more about what I was doing for this like monster fighting game here. But that would take probably longer than we have. If there's any of these that you'd want more detail on, I would love to go into it. Again, Dice Monsters will be something that I want to find some iteration, even if it is just for my sake, doing a small batch run and getting these updated to more modern style and like a few changes here and there just for a fun, pull it out of your pocket and you play kind of game. But that is for future me. We've got a lot of other things coming up. Speaking of things coming up, this Saturday from 10:30 to 1 o'clock at the Cloquet Public Library, Oaken Hollow Games, Gameplay Stay, other makers and stuff are going to be at FanCon. This is a yearly thing the library puts on, and I'm very excited. I know the Ghostbusters were there, or at least part of the squad was there last year, so that was kind of cool. Oaken Hollow Games will be doing a full hour panel Q&A, so show up if you have any questions for that. I'm going to probably bring some of this stuff there just to show like early stuff. I will not be going into this much detail with them there, just for time. But you'll be able to demo Skirmish. It's close, kids. It is almost here. What I'm working on tonight, it's usually a test night. And it's just been so busy. I needed a night just in and not testing so I can punch out those final things for Skirmish to get it out so we can get it on your table. Skirmish, Graveyard Smash will be there. I'm going to bring the whole world box. So if you want to see some of the monsters that I have coming up for All Hallows Eve as well that you want a little bit more detail on, absolutely come and see. I will be fully open about any questions with that. Be warned of spoilers for people who don't want it. But yeah, it'll be a fun time. So I knew this one was going to be a little bit long. I had some time to catch up on. I rambled a bit, but I hope this was interesting to you. For me, it's just fun to look back on this stuff, and it really sparks a lot of passion that, I mean, I still have. It just drives me forward, but I love making games that I like to play and my friends like to play, and seeing stuff I've made in the past when it was just purely to entertain my friends. And the ones that were in that vein, to me, Dice Monsters, are the ones that stand out more and have the most functionality, whereas the ones like that dungeon diving one, the heart wasn't in it, so it wasn't as good or as overcomplicated because I was trying to chase after somebody else's ideals. And yeah, so it's cool to look back on and see what pieces have come from my other games and have got us to where we are now. So thank you for coming down a little memory lane trip with me. Again, if there's anything more you want to look into, let me know. If there's a game that you're like, that actually sounds super stupid cool to me, please start working on something like that. That's also cool. If I find any more hanging out in a cupboard or a closet somewhere, I will add those on another video. But until then, I hope you all have an pleasant evening, and I hope to see you this Saturday. Thank you very much.